In today's world, data is everywhere. Data is used in communication, healthcare, security, and agriculture, among many other areas. With such complex data to be dealt with, data visualization and interaction tools are increasingly used to analyze data and make critical decisions that affect entire nations and the world as a whole. However, bias impacts people's decision making and can skew the process of analyzing the data and the decisions that result. Therefore, it is important to look into the impact of cognitive bias on user interactions in data visualizations. To elaborate, here's a graphic to show why focusing on problems of bias in visualization has potentially high value. People interact with data and visualizations by clicking, hovering, and so on. Their patterns of interactions with the data can reveal quite a bit about the user's thought process. Those interactions can be used as a rough approximation of the user's cognitive state to roughly detect or characterize aspects of their biases. And if we know how people are biased, the types and severities of those biases can suggest ways that we can inform users. We can then design interventions that can modify aspects of the interface to make users aware of those biases in real time to help them make better decisions. In this work, we are focusing on refining the area of bias detection. In a previous paper by Wall et al., a set of computational metrics were defined for characterizing bias based on people's interactions with a visualization. As input, the bias metrics take in user interaction sequences. Coverage metrics pay attention to the portion of data that has been interacted with, while distribution metrics pay attention to the range of the data interacted with. But all of this relies on comparing the user's interactions to some notion of unbiased behavior. We model this using a Markov model. We consider the probability of the user's next interaction by considering what their current interaction is. We can visualize these probabilities as a matrix, where the value in one cell represents the probability of first interacting with the data point represented by that row, and next interacting with the data point represented by that column. In the initial paper, there was a coarse assumption that all interactions are equally likely. That's probably not true in most cases. The goal of this work is to understand how bias, specifically anchoring bias, impacts the way people view and interact with data. We hypothesized that a better baseline accounts for a higher probability of users interacting with nearby data points than faraway data points. To test this, we used a visualization tool called Interaxis. We conducted a user study with 13 participants, with each participant given statistics on basketball players. We asked users to categorize the 100 basketball players by analyzing and labeling the data in the interactive system. We induced anchoring bias by presenting two groups of participants with different information about the basketball players' positions. We found that users were significantly more likely, regardless of which condition they were in, to interact with the same player in subsequent interactions, as can be seen by the dark colors and high probabilities on the diagonal. Furthermore, people were more likely to interact with players of the same position in subsequent interactions. Next, we divided the scatter plot into quadrants to assess the probabilities of interactions within and between the quadrants. We observed a similar trend. People tend to interact with data points in the same quadrant or data points that are nearby than data points that are far away. We repeated this analysis with a 3x3 grid of the scatter plot, and also a 4x4 grid of the scatter plot. In both cases, we observed the same trend of more probable interactions along the diagonal. As you can see, the trend does not change. So, in conclusion, equal probabilities across all interactions are unlikely to occur, regardless of how people are biased. The results of our experiment indicate that the interactions with nearby data points are more likely than faraway data points. This ultimately helps us improve the ability of these metrics for detecting bias by having a better idea of what unbiased behavior looks like. At this stage in our project, data analysis is currently incomplete. In future work, however, we would like to analyze other aspects of visual salience, including things like color saturation, clusters, outliers, and so on. Thank you.